Hello and welcome to Investing Confidential. So, what happened in France? French government basically collapsed. I'm going to discuss why that happened, but really, France is a sideshow. I mean, the big problem is Germany. If you don't think this is going to have implications in the U.S., you're crazy. Uh, this links into what happened in Korea, South Korea, where the government basically collapsed. Brazil, where it's a disaster. Same thing. This is spreading globally. It's about budgets, about out of control budget spending. Sounds familiar, right? About populism, political upheaval. And the big question that I'll address at the end is the US next? Are we next? Are we going to have a collapsing government? Okay. Just had an election. It's incredible. But all right, so let's begin. Okay, so the fate of the European Union is not France, it's Germany. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, France is a sideshow. Okay, the German economy has been sick for quite some time, as you can see. This goes back to before COVID. The German economy. I mean, this is staggering, folks. I mean, look at this. I mean, this 10 years ago. This was one of the strongest economies in the world by far. By far, the strongest economy in Europe. Global powerhouse. Look at it now. Germany's sick, folks. It's a sick economy. When you look at the the, the problems that we've seen in Germany, it comes down to the consumer, and what this comes down to in this chart here, as we look at imports versus exports, we always see them kind of moving in lockstep. Germany is always a big export economy, and that continues today. But look how imports have just collapsed versus exports. Okay, that's not good. I mean, you could make a case that it's going back to normal, but I can make a case that it's just going to get worse. And we see it also in industrial production. Uh, Again, we see the crazy COVID spending, and then now industrial production is collapsing. Okay, that's not good. And you see it even worse in consumer goods. I mean, we're going back to the COVID lows. I keep people think I'm crazy, right? The U.S. market's going okay, yeah. Economically, the index is going up. All these indexes keep going up. German index keeps going up. But how does it continue when the underlying economies are literally a disaster? Here's Germany's PMI, purchasing managers. I mean, this is brutal. This is brutal. Okay, and when we look at things, energy, right? Energy is the key to everything, an investment in energy, right? So look at energy. Energy costs are going up, but investments in energy, investments overall, are going down. Okay, eventually, when you don't invest, what does that do? This is Economics 101. It will hit your profits. If you don't invest for the future, it's going to hit your profits. Okay, a lot of companies, especially US companies, they use a lot of funky accounting and they smooth out their earnings. You're not seeing anything, but underlying, if you look at things in real terms, volumes in items, not volumes in revenue, where they play around with the cost, where they play around with pricing, things are going down. And eventually this leads to, as we see here, unemployment rising fast. We're basically blown through COVID, the unemployment rate. For COVID. And, you could say the numbers are fake, but here, Volkswagen. Folks, Volkswagen, this is the first time they've closed the plant in Germany in 87 years. 87 years. mean, that goes through World War II. I mean, this, and then we've got German yields. Okay, the spread between Germany and the rest of the EU has collapsed. Okay, Germany now, the yields are higher than what they call the pigs: Portugal, Greece, Italy, Spain. Remember the pigs back in 2011, 12, 13? Pigs almost collapsed. Germans wanted to get out of the EU. No. Now it's the complete opposite. Now the pigs want Germany out of the EU. I'm only kidding, but that's what's happened. A complete reversal. And what does this lead to? It leads basically to political upheaval. All of these things leading to political upheaval. And you've got now real problems in Germany because, as what happens most of the time, what happens, look, this is not political, but you've had the left and the socialists in power in Europe for a very long time. They've been doing things they shouldn't be doing, especially with immigration. Okay, this is a big hot button. And so now the far right is gaining power, including, folks, by the way, the German Nazi Party. This is very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. And then you've got the Trump effect, which is essentially the US dollar strengthening, and then you've got the threat of tariffs. Now, look, if you really understand what Trump is doing and how he uses tariffs, there's going to be no tariffs imposed on this, but the threat of tariffs is enough to, continue this cascade, because this is happening way before Trump. And as far as Germany, I mean, Germany is not really the issue, as I mentioned. As far as Europe, I mean, the French situation, okay, which I'll talk about now, is what's front and center. France is in the crosshairs. France is, believe it or not, it's in much worse situation than Germany. Germany is much more important, but France is getting all the press because not only is their economy crashing again, look at PMIs, okay, this is a disaster. Their yields are spiking as well. The yields of France versus Germany, so the yields are worse in France than they are in Germany. Yields are going up. People are concerned. And this goes back to what I mentioned at the beginning. This is all about a budget. Okay? You look at all I mentioned, all these other things I talked about, it's all about budgets. Okay, they can't come to a budget. There's too much spending. The spending is out of control. And the opposition parties, which in most of the cases here are the conservative parties, have had enough. They've had enough of the social programs for non-French people. Out of control. It goes back to the immigration. And this has led to a no confidence vote. The government in France has collapsed. Collapsed late last week. Prime Minister is gone. This is a parliamentary system. They call for no confidence vote. When that happens, it's over. Now Macron is hanging on. He refuses to step down. Okay, there will be protests. I don't think anyone in France likes Macron. Macron is not popular. He used to be popular, but he's part of this global establishment, which has benefited tremendously by globalism, but has affected what they call, in the US, we call the mainstream. And conservatives, who are now part of the populist movement, represent workers now, believe it or not. That's an incredible turnaround in the last 50 years. They've had enough. Had enough of the crazy spending, had enough of the wars, money going to Ukraine. And so the French government has collapsed. Look, folks, the rest of the EU is a mess, by the way, and it's not just France and Germany. I mean, it's across the board. With maybe the exception of Ireland, it's across the board. It's high debt, low tax revenue, crazy budgets, supporting wars that nobody in the population wants. And look, the most stable economy, the strongest economy, not the biggest, but the strongest economy in Europe has been for a long time. Sweden is in recession, folks. Look at this, the last 3 quarters. This is a true recession. The most stable economy in Europe for 20 years is now gone in recession. So you're asking me, oh, well, we're in the US. Does it matter? Well, you better believe it matters. You better believe it matters, because these budget issues have implications for Ukraine, for the EU, for NATO, and the implications for the U.S. are dire. You have the European Union represents is 570 million people, bigger than the U.S. 570 million people, a big consumer market in recession. Now, think about our companies. Think about what's leading the market today. It's Magnificent Seven. It's big companies. It's these global companies. These companies cannot continue to report higher earnings every quarter. It's impossible. You've got slumping China. You've got a recession here in the States. You've got basically in Main Street, and you've got a recession confirmed now in Europe and political upheaval. The large companies cannot continue. Look, globalism is dead, folks. When I mean global, I mean that the movement towards globalism was good. It's enough. It's over. But the politicians don't want it to be over. And this is the problem. And so the budget issues today, it's a global thing. Look what's going on in Brazil. The real hit over 6, the weakest ever. You've got a socialist government trying to put through a budget with unpopular spending. They want to spend more money, give more money away to their voting base. And the currency has gotten destroyed. Interest rates, which were supposed to be around 7-8% going down, are now Selic rate, being their money market rate, is over 12%. It's going higher. And the same issues that is affecting France, Germany, Brazil is affected Korea. You guys saw the South Korea. I don't know if you know the details about it, but the South Korean government basically has collapsed. They couldn't come to a budget, so that the president, who is more of a lawyer than anything else, he's good. He's got a solid handle on his spending, out of control spending. Didn't want to do it anymore. He couldn't come to a budget. Now, he made a big mistake. He declared martial law like a fool. But this was, again, budget issues, out of control spending. So it goes back to gold, Bitcoin. People are just fed up. They've had enough. The governments are out of control. But going back to Germany, which is the real key, a German political upheaval, if it happens like it's happening in France, that's the biggest risk to the EU and to the US and to the world. Historical perspective. When Germans have political upheaval, there's usually a world war that follows. I'm not calling for World War III. All I'm telling you is, look at your history, read some books, or go to ChatGPT if you don't want to read. Most people don't like to read. The far right in Germany rising should be a red flag for everyone. I don't like the socialists in Germany. I don't like them. They're the globalist socialists. They should be out. But they've gone so far to the left, so far to one side, that now we're going to go back to the other side. And the other side is very, very dangerous. So the world's a dangerous place. Every couple of days, we have a new government collapsing. and the S&P continues to go up. Should you sell the S&P? Absolutely not, until you have to. The trend continues to be higher. Because in the end, what I'm telling you is US continues to be the only game in town till it's not. So it's impossible for the US economy to continue growing the way it is. It's impossible for companies in the US to have higher earnings when the rest of the world governments are collapsing. And by the way, there's a budget issue coming up in the US. There's a vote coming in the next week to fund the government. I don't know what's going to happen, but there's going to be hell to pay soon. And again, this is not political. It doesn't matter who got elected. Probably things are going to come to a head faster with Trump than with Harris, because they would have buried it. And then it would have really been a nightmare. But things are coming to a head globally and with the US. So, as always, with all this mess in Germany and France and South Korea and Brazil, be very, very careful out there.